She left. Not because you weren't enough, because loyalty was never meant to be enough. They told you loyalty would be your fortress, your ironclad defense. But here you are, shoulders heavy, standing in the ashes of a battlefield where your loyalty was the blood spilled silently, unseen, unclaimed. You gave everything, the nights forged in shadow, the quiet sacrifices that no one else noticed. And yet, you were a ghost in her world. The steel you sharpened for her loyalty became the weight that crushed you, the silence that swallowed your voice. You thought being loyal made you worthy. It didn't make you chosen. It just made you the lone wolf, howling at a cold sky no one else bothered to hear. You sat, steady and unmoving, imagining that your devotion built bridges. But beneath your feet, those bridges turned to ash, crumbling without warning. Here's the truth no one dares say. Loyalty is not a currency you spend to buy love. It's a sword you wield, knowing it might only cut your own flesh. Your pain is the echo of a man who stood his ground when storms tried to break him. That ache means you showed up when others fled. You carried weight that was never meant for you alone. Now, in this quiet wreckage, stop looking for reasons in her absence. Look inward. Your presence left a mark, not on her walls, but in the unyielding strength you forged beneath the surface. Loyalty wasn't your shackle. It was your offering. And if she didn't claim it, that was never your failure. You are the steel that remains when all the smoke clears. Waiting on the other side of loyalty's illusion means facing the raw truth. You were never invisible. You just weren't seen by who mattered most. But that does not erase your depth. It doesn't diminish the man built in the silence between use and abandonment. You walked through hell and never raised your voice. That is the loyalty that endures. Not for them, but for yourself. You've been told to open up, to peel back the layers, to show them the raw, unfiltered pieces of your soul. They say vulnerability is strength now, but have you noticed the silence that follows? The way your truth vanishes into a void, brushed aside like yesterday's debris? You lay it out there, your wounds, your loyalty, the nights spent carrying burdens that no one else would touch. And what do you get? The cold shoulder, the quick dismissal, the subtle nod that says, "Thanks, but no thanks." Why does your loyalty make you invisible? Why does standing firm in your word turn you into a ghost, wandering on the edges of their attention? There's a predator in that paradox. You're trained to share, trained to bleed honesty, but the moment you do, respect withdraws. Like a wolf howling into the wind, your cry meets nothing but distance, and the storm inside only grows thicker. You wonder where the line disappeared between being emotionally available and being outright dismissed. Where is the honor in this so-called era of openness when your truth doesn't earn a seat at the table, but instead earns exile? They ask for your authenticity, yet recoil when you hand it over, like you're baring your throat and they just sharpen their knives. And so you ask yourself, quietly, late at night, when mask slips and armor cracks, is being good enough even a currency anymore? Because every time you say, "I'm fine," you're holding in a scream, a wound that echoes with old betrayals and fatherless shadows. The ghosts tap at your ribs, their rhythm relentless. Is this emotional availability just another form of sacrifice? Another bet you put on the table that never pays out? You gave them the steel of your character, pure and unyielding, and found nothing but echoes loitering in the silence. Rejection in the face of honesty is a betrayal that chips away at the bedrock beneath your feet. It turns what could have been mastery over self into a forlorn chase after mirages. Yet, in that dry wasteland of being seen but unseen, you carry a different kind of fire. The cold, quiet forge of a man who knows the weight of invisibility and still chooses to stand. When the walls close in and the ones you trusted turn cold, your first instinct is to fight, to resist the pain, the betrayal, the silence that gnaws at your bones. But resisting is like striking a storm with your bare hands. The storm doesn't bend or falter, it only grows angrier. And just like a storm-tested oak, you don't question why the wind howls or why the lightning burns your bark. You stand taller. You sink your roots deeper into the earth beneath you. Your loyalty, your suffering, they are not wounds meant to bleed forever. They are the slow forging of steel. There's a man I know, maybe you've met him too in your darker hours, who chased a love that wasn't his to catch. Every mile he ran, every desperate plea he whispered into the void, only drew him further into a wilderness without compass or direction. One day he stopped chasing, not out of defeat, but because he finally saw where the real battle was being fought, in his own mind. He let the grief settle, sharpened it, and used it as a lantern to cut through the thicket of life's forest. Instead of a desperate sprint, he learned to walk with purpose and quiet endurance. Epictetus said that pain doesn't come from the event itself, but from how you see it. And this is the edge where your power lives. You cannot control the betrayal, the rejection, or the cold shoulders, but you can control where your spirit goes next. Let go of what you can't grasp. The world doesn't pause for your pain. It won't soften for your disappointment. The only thing it honors is a man who forgives himself enough to keep moving through the silence. Your struggles are not dead ends. They're tests, deep iron tests of your essence. You are not broken because the storm rages around you. You are a force refined in the chaos, a wolf marked by scars that map your survival. This is your crucible. This is how you become unbreakable by embracing what is instead of fighting what isn't. Pain without surrender is a weapon. You carry it within, silent and commanding. Loyalty is not currency. You give it fully, and sometimes the world turns its back without even a glance. Detachment doesn't mean turning cold or robotic. It means standing back far enough to watch the fire without getting burned. You feel the heat, sure, but you don't let it melt you down. Witness your pain, your anger, your disappointment, like a wolf watching the wind shift through the trees, without becoming the noise inside your head. Clarity comes when you recognize the storm for what it is, not what your fears make it out to be. You carve your own path by choosing how to translate that pain. Every gut punch becomes a lever, every scar a tool to pry yourself forward. Your power isn't in avoiding the chaos, but in riding its edge without falling off. Emotional control is your sword, sharp, steady, and unyielding. You don't react, you respond. The world hurls punches, but your mind stays calm, anchored deep as the roots of an ancient oak. The storms will come, but you are not a leaf tossed in the wind. You are the ground itself. Your mission, that wild fire burning deep, is the only thing that deserves your undivided allegiance. It's the silent cult you swear to, the promise you keep to yourself when no one's watching. Whether it's your craft, your passion, or that dream smoldering in your gut since you were a boy, this is your true north. Anchor your identity there, not in the shifting opinions, the applause that fades, or the approval that ebbs like dead tides. Approval is a mirage. Purpose is unbreakable. When you carry purpose, you stop chasing validation and start embodying strength no storm can shake. This is masculine power distilled, not loud and brash, but deep and relentless. Mastery isn't some trophy you earn, it's the daily grind you endure alone. You are both the architect and the warrior of your soul's forge. Iron sharpens iron. That means you seek the friction that breaks lesser men, but hones warriors. Raise your standards until softness is no longer an option. Let your actions echo through the silence louder than any boast. Build discipline like steel. Let it creak and groan under pressure but never snap. Self-mastery is the loneliness you embrace before dawn, the cold silence after the last insult, the decision to stand and fight when the world wants you down. You don't just live a life, you chisel it out of stone, relentless, precise, immovable. You walked through hell, never raised your voice, and now you move through the world as a quiet storm, undeniable, unstoppable. You've walked through fire, not as a man broken, but as one tempered by flame and smoke. The weight of silence is no longer a cage. It's the anvil on which you hammer away the last scraps of doubt. The voices that once haunted you, the echoes of inadequacy and loss, have no place here. This moment isn't a quiet surrender, but a fierce embodiment of raw, unyielding strength. You don't need to prove anything because you know the truth beneath your skin. Strength isn't shouted out loud. It's lived in the stillness where no one watches, where the wolf sharpens its teeth under a moonless sky. The absence you feared was never empty. It's a vast, open field, ready for the seeds only you can plant. Seeds of self-reliance, purpose, and relentless growth. You won't rise from the shadow of those who doubted you or abandoned you. You rise as your own sun, burning steady and blazing relentless. The man you are now is forged from rejection and silence, defiant against the noise of a world that tries to define worth by fleeting validation. Your identity is not borrowed from others' recognition. It is carved from your own resolve, your own suffering, and your own triumph. This is the man who walks away from the wreckage not looking back, not searching for approval, but grounded in a conviction so deep it shakes the earth beneath him. You lead in silence. Because in that quiet, the wolf is not just surviving. It is hunting. It is thriving. It is the master of its own fate. I don't explain. I elevate.